Alrighty, so now that we got that first formal video out of the way and I can relax a little bit, I'd like to just give a quick tone tip. This is our first tone tip, and this is extremely important to me. You know, a lot of people tend to be really focused on a specific way to get a sound that they've learned to acquire with their amplifier. You know, for example, I have here with me actually a Fender Twin Reverb. This is a 1976 Fender Twin Reverb that I rebuilt completely from the ground up to Fender Blackface specs with a couple of small modifications. I've used this amp for quite a bit, you know, and I've learned the settings that get me my sound. You know, but the other day I actually unpacked the amplifier for a gig, and the settings had changed with the amp cover on it to something totally different from what I was used to. Normally, I have the volume around 3, treble around 6 or 7, the middle's turned down to about 4, and the bass around 3 to 4. And this gives me a nice, clear, pure, clean sound. However, things had changed and the treble was down to about 3, the middle was up to about 8, and the bass was up a little bit more, actually around 5. You know, and I turned the volume up. It was an outdoor gig, so I turned it up a little more to 4, and I hit the note, and it was just such a big, fat tone that I was absolutely floored by. I thought it sounded fantastic. So I played the gig like that. I didn't change anything. You know, so that's just an example. You don't want to get stuck in this rut, this idea that there's only one way to get a tone that you might like. You know, and this extends even more so when you talk about other amplifiers. You know, every amp responds differently. A Fender tone stack, for example, sounds completely different from a Marshall tone stack. You know, so once you're used to the way you get the sound you like on your amp, if you go to play another amp, say a Marshall, it's going to sound completely different with the same settings. You might not like that sound. So just keep in mind that just because it sounds good on one amp does not mean it's going to sound the same on another amp. It may sound better. You just have to experiment. Just don't get stuck in that rut of thinking, you know, that there's only one way to get a sound you like. Keep an open mind. You know, and it's also important to keep in mind that even amplifiers of the same model and of the same age can sound very different for numerous reasons. You know, like again, talking about the Fender Twin. You know, they were and are available with numerous different speakers. This has JBL speakers, D120, and K120 speaker. You know, and those are really loud, pure, bright, clean sounding speakers, you know, so a lot of people would want to turn the treble down lower with speakers like that. But if you had something like Jensen C12Ns, which are common, they're still bright, but not as much so. You might want to turn the treble up a little bit to get a similar sound. You know, so the speakers are one big thing. The speaker condition can vary wildly. You know, every tube set sounds different. You know, you have to keep in mind that different components in the amplifier will all have changed their values over time, especially when you talk about an old vintage amplifier. They drift over time, you know, depending on heat and different conditions and different factors, and every component's going to drift a little different. So the circuit starts to sound different. And even a brand new amp, two brand new amps that are identical models still might sound different because of tolerances. You know, most components, you know, resistors are 5% tolerance usually. Electrolytic capacitors usually a 20% tolerance. So there's a lot of variation even between two brand new amps, you know, so they might sound a little bit different. So just keep in mind, have an open mind. And having an open mind is, in my opinion, probably the most important single thing to know to get the best tone you can every single time. This is Brandon Tarbox and Tarbox Amplification. Thank you so much.